Hello, my name is Casey Barr, and I am the supervisor over the new Small School District program at the Office of Public School Construction. Today, we'll be discussing the Small School District program and ensuing eligibility requirements and the funding process looking ahead. Looking at the agenda, we'll do a brief introduction to our office for those that may not be familiar, review the new program, as well as do a brief recap of the modernization and new construction programs, as well as provide some resources such as our email subscription list, as well as some contact information for folks in our office. The Office of Public School Construction, also known as OPSC, is under the authority of the Department of General Services with the state of California. Our office serves as staff to the State Allocation Board, comprised of a membership of the Director of Finance, the Director of the Department of General Services, the Superintendent of Public Instruction, 3 members of the Senate, 3 members of the Assembly, and 1 appointee by the Governor. The State Allocation Board meets monthly to consider eligibility and funding applications, apportion funds to school districts, as well as adopt policies and regulations, amongst other things. Our office implements and administers a $54.5 billion program for school facilities construction and facilitates the processing and funding of school facility construction grant applications. As you can see here, we mention new construction and modernization. However, we do have other programs such as the new Natural Disaster Assistance Program, the Facility Hardship and Seismic Mitigation Programs, Career Technical Education Programs, just to name a few. For purposes of today, though, we will be focusing on modernization and new construction programs as we discuss this new program. So, what is the Small School District program? We're going to take a look at an overview of this, a broad overview, what the eligibility requirements are to participate in the program, and also take a look at what the funding process looks like ahead. So this program was established by the passage of Proposition 2 by California voters in 2024. So how did we get here? Our office held a total of 6 collaborative stakeholder meetings as we implemented the provisions of statute into our regulations. We'd like to sincerely thank the stakeholders that participated in these meetings for all their feedback as we developed these regulations, as well as a new application form distinct for this program. The regulations and new application form were presented to the State Allocation Board for consideration on February 25th of this year, received approval, and next steps for these regulations and the new form will be for consideration by the Office of Administrative Law. That being said, out of the total bond authority allocated for purposes of the modernization and new construction programs, up to 10% of this authority was reserved for purposes of the Small School District program. The State Allocation Board approved the full 10% as permitted under statute, which resulted in the following amounts reserved for purposes of this program. That is $400 million reserved for modernization projects, and $330 million is reserved for new construction projects. So, who can participate in this program? Well, public school districts or county offices of education with 2,500 pupils or fewer may participate within this program. You'll notice an asterisk on screen here, wherein this number is derived in accordance with the School Facility Program, SFP, Regulation Section 1859.2 definition for small school district. So, how is funding requested with this program? Well, the application vehicle to request funding under this program is by means of a preliminary small school district program apportionment, which reserves bond authority for up to 4 years from the point of which the application is approved by the State Allocation Board. There's an additional one-time, 1-year extension available for a potential 5-year period that is subject to State Allocation Board approval. This program has 2 opening dates, one for modernization projects and one for new construction projects. For modernization projects, the program opening date shall commence on November 2nd, 2026. For new construction projects, the program opening date shall commence on January 15th, 2027. Applications are processed in date order received, and in the event that on any single given day our office receives more applications in a single day than can be funded with available bond authority, a lottery system will be held. Our office encourages the timely submission of applications for the respective programs, as we do expect a high interest in this small school district program. So please be ready to submit on that first day. So now that we've introduced the small school district program as a program to access modernization and new construction funding distinctly for small school districts and county offices of education with an enrollment of 2,500 students or fewer, we will do a brief overview of the modernization and new construction programs for those that may not be familiar with them or just need a quick revisit. So the purpose of modernization funding is to extend the useful life of existing facilities and to enhance the physical environment of a school site. Funding for this program can be used for a current project or to reimburse a completed project and can also be used to demolish and replace existing square footage. Now, in order to request modernization funding, districts must establish and/or update their modernization eligibility using the Eligibility Determination Form SAB 5003. Eligibility for this is in the form of pupil grants, which are then used to provide funding for improvements to enhance and extend the useful life of facilities. Modernization eligibility is site-specific and uses student enrollment and the ages and types of buildings to determine the amount of funds each district site is eligible to receive. Permanent buildings that are 25 years or older and portable buildings that are 20 years or older can generate modernization eligibility if the enrollment at the site justifies the need to modernize the building. Eligibility is also determined based on classroom count or square footage and enrollment. Districts establish an initial baseline eligibility for a site that remains in place as the basis for all future site-based eligibility updates or funding applications. This baseline is updated over time to reflect increases in enrollment or other changes, such as facilities coming of age. Districts use this eligibility to request funding from the state to assist in the modernization of school facilities. It's important to note that once modernization eligibility is established, eligibility is not required to be updated. And lastly, permanent buildings that are 50 years old or older may also receive additional funding with increased per pupil grant amounts. Older buildings have much more to fix and renovate, and therefore, increased grants provide an avenue to address those needs. 50 years or older eligibility is calculated based on the total eligible classrooms or square footage on campus, excluding the not of age space. So on this next slide, we can see an excerpt of part 3 of that Form SAB 5003 we mentioned, which is used to establish and/or update modernization eligibility. For applicants that are seeking to establish modernization eligibility for a site, you will select New, as you can see here under Part 3. For applicants seeking to submit an eligibility update for a site, you would select Adjusted. Under line 1, you would indicate the school name as well as the option you select at the time of submittal, either option A or option B. To elaborate on the difference between the options, option A calculates eligibility by comparing the total number of classrooms of age, permanent or portable, multiplied by the loading standards of each classroom and the total enrollment for the site, taking the lesser of the two as the modernization eligibility. Option B calculates eligibility by reporting either by classroom count or square footage, generating a ratio of the percentage of facilities of age by the total number of facilities on site, and then generating a percentage that is subsequently multiplied by the enrollment as reported by each grade group. Our office highly encourages applicants to fill out both options on the Form SAB 5003 in order to determine which option generates the most advantageous eligibility for the district. So now that we've taken a look at the modernization program and what eligibility requirements are to participate within it, we can take a look at the new construction program and eligibility requirements associated with that program. So new construction funding differs from modernization funding in that it provides funding to add classroom capacity to meet future student housing needs, as well as fund costs associated with new school construction, classroom additions, site acquisition costs, site development costs, and the construction of minimal minimum essential facilities such as a gymnasium or a multipurpose room. In order to request new construction funding, the first step is establishing and/or updating your new construction eligibility. New construction eligibility is based upon district-wide eligibility in contrast to modernization, which is site-specific. So, to establish new construction eligibility, applicants must submit a total of 3 forms to our office, as seen here. The district must submit an enrollment certification projection, Form SAB 5001, which accounts for current and past enrollment and generates an enrollment projection. Next, the district must submit an existing school building capacity, Form SAB 5002, which accounts for existing school building capacity district-wide. Finally, the district must submit an eligibility determination, Form SAB 5003, which uses information generated from both the Form SAB 5001 and the Form SAB 5002 in order to determine the new construction eligibility in the form of pupil grants for the district. So once the establishment eligibility for new construction is approved, new construction eligibility is valid for up to 5 years from the point of which the eligibility application package is approved, noted as something called a 5-year lock for small school districts distinctly. For school districts who have established new construction previously and need to update their eligibility, subsequent updates will only use the Form SAB 5001. Now that we've discussed what the modernization and new construction programs are and what the eligibility requirements are, we can discuss how we use that eligibility to request on a funding application. So, using the pupil grants generated from either your modernization or new construction eligibility establishments or updates, the district would then know how many pupil grants they have available to request on an application for preliminary small school district program apportionment, Form SAB 5012. This is the new application form that districts will use to request a preliminary apportionment, which will be used to preserve bond authority for their projects for the estimated state grants using an inflator factor. At the time of submittal for this application, no plan approvals are required as this is a preliminary application. Another provision of Proposition 2 was the Project and Construction Management Grant for this program. This particular grant is equal to 5% of the state share of the preliminary apportionment and is available for districts to obtain services that will assist with project planning from specified sources. This particular grant is recalculated at the time the district converts the preliminary apportionment to a final apportionment. Now that we've talked about the new application and the new supplemental grant, we can take a look at what modernization and new construction grants and supplemental grants there are to request on this application, especially since the passage of Proposition 2 permitted additional supplemental grants within the modernization program. So historically, modernization grant funding has been provided on a 60% state share basis and then a 40% local matching share basis. Within the passage of Proposition 2, a new sliding scale was established, also known as a local funding adjustment grant. This local funding adjustment grant is calculated through point computations regarding the district's gross bonding capacity, the district's unduplicated pupil count percentage, pupil enrollment of 200 pupils or fewer, and if the district's project may or will include the use of a project labor agreement. The maximum percentage for state share can thus be 65%, and minimum percentage for local match would be 35%. The base grant for a modernization application provides funding for the design, construction, testing, inspection, furniture, equipment, and other costs for school construction. It can be used for a variety of work on a school campus, not building new area or new site development. Funding is per pupil grant amounts to comprise this base grant, and these amounts are adjusted annually based on the Class B construction cost index as determined by RS means. In addition to the base grant, districts may request supplemental grants within their applications, such as the Automatic Fire Detection Alarm Supplemental Grant, which is provided per pupil for costs to fix or replace fire alarms and detection devices. Or project assistance, which is a set grant amount meant for providing funding of administrative costs to small school districts. Or accessibility fire code compliance to cover the costs of access and fire code compliance. In addition to these existing supplemental grants, the passage of Proposition 2 provided the following new supplemental grants for modernization applications. Permanent buildings that are 75 years or older may receive additional funding. Supplemental grants for modernization projects that supports career technical education programs. Supplemental grants to provide new transitional kindergarten classrooms. Supplemental grants to provide new or expansions to minimum essential facilities. And an energy efficiency supplemental grant. Now that we've done a quick overview of modernization materials, we can take a look at new construction grants and supplemental grants. Historically, for new construction projects, funding is provided on a 50% state and a 50% local matching share basis. Just as with modernization funding, with the passage of Proposition 2, the new sliding scale was established, that local funding adjustment grant, using the exact calculation to determine the grant amount. The maximum percentage for state share can thus be 55%, and a minimum percentage for local would be 45%. The base grant for new construction funding provides funding for design, construction, testing, inspection, furniture, equipment, and other costs for school construction. Funding for this program is allocated on a per pupil basis for pupils that are not able to be currently housed per state loading standards in the district's existing classroom inventory. One thing to note with new construction funding is that constructed facilities within the project submitted to OPSC may not be occupied prior to the submittal of a funding application to our office. Specifically for the small school district program, for both the preliminary and final program applications, both of these applications must be submitted to OPSC before the constructed facilities are occupied. Supplemental grants for the new construction projects are available in addition to the base grant. Existing supplemental grants are available, such as site development costs, fire code requirements, geographic location, and project assistance that a set grant amount meant for providing funding of administrative costs to small school districts. And new with the passage of Proposition 2, the energy efficiency as a supplemental grant is available as well. So now that we've covered the broad brushstroke overview of modernization and new construction eligibility and funding, and what you would request on your preliminary small school district program application, we can take a look at some of the requirements as a result of the passage of Proposition 2, namely the 5-year facilities master plan requirement for participation within the school facility program. As you can see within this chart, there's a 2-step process affiliated with the master plan. Namely, at the time the applicant submits their Form SAB 5012, prior to or concurrently, the district must submit a local governing board resolution acknowledging the requirement of the master plan at the time the district submits their conversion application, utilizing the application for funding, Form SAB 5004. Drafts of this particular local governing board resolution may be found on our DGS OPSC webpage. The master plan itself is required before or concurrently when the Form SAB 5004 is submitted to OPSC within 4 years of the preliminary apportionment approval date. Next, we're going to take a walk through the process of a preliminary to a final apportionment just to see what it would look like from start to finish with this program. So under step 1, the applicant, assuming they have submitted any necessary eligibility establishments or updates in advance or concurrently with the application, would submit a Form SAB 5012, requesting that preliminary apportionment come program opening dates for the respective programs. Within this application, if you're intending to request financial hardship assistance, you would make that request on the Form SAB 5012 as you submit it. Under step 2, our office will process that Form SAB 5012, which is a collaborative process between OPSC staff and the district, and if requested, financial hardship eligibility is verified concurrently. Next, step 3, follows our team processing and verifying the Form SAB 5012, and the application is ready to be presented to the State Allocation Board for consideration. Once the application receives State Allocation Board approval, the application will receive an unfunded approval of the preliminary apportionment. Now, here is where the conversion pathways may diverge a bit, depending on if the district is requesting an advance release of funds, if they qualify for financial hardship assistance, or if they're requesting advance environmental hardship site acquisition funding. Under Step 4, if the district is requesting an advance release of funds under either of those circumstances, they may do so by participating in the next priority funding round to request an advance release of funds by submitting a written request to convert their unfunded approval to an apportionment. Qualifying applicants for a new construction separate advance release of funds shall be equal to 40% of the sum of the new construction grant, project assistance grant, project and construction management grant, and/or any site acquisition funds from a preliminary program apportionment. Qualifying applicants for a modernization separate advance release of funds shall be equal to 25% of the sum of the modernization grant, project assistance, and the project and construction management grant. Now, with Step 5, for those eligible applicants, after they have participated in an upcoming priority funding round, they may submit a fund release authorization Form SAB 5005 for their advance release of funds. Of note, the final program apportionment shall be offset by any funding previously received for a separate advance release of funds. Next, under Step 6, this is where our paths reconverge. So all applicants will then submit their Form SAB 5004 to convert the preliminary to a final apportionment alongside the required components of a Form SAB 5004 submittal, such as any applicable California Department of Education or DSA, Division of State Architect plan approvals, as well as that 5-year facility master plan as discussed. These must be submitted within 4 years of the Form SAB 5012 State Allocation Board approval date. Under Step 7, OPSC will process that Form SAB 5004, and if the district is requesting financial hardship again, eligibility will be re-verified at the time our office processes the application. Once our team processes the Form SAB 5004 under Step 8, the district's application will be presented to the State Allocation Board for consideration and unfunded approval once again. Following this, under Step 9, the district may then participate in the next priority funding round to request their unfunded approval be converted to an apportionment, and then the district under Step 10 would submit that Form SAB 5005 for that final apportionment fund release. So this next slide specifies major requirements for applicants who wish to convert their preliminary to a final apportionment. This list is only major requirements and is dependent on the district's application. There may be other requirements not listed here that may be found on the Form SAB 5004 checklist available on our webpage. First, the district must submit a Form SAB 5004 signed by an authorized district representative within 4 years of State Allocation Board approval of the preliminary application, or potentially 5 if a district received a one-time 1-year extension by the State Allocation Board. In addition to the Form SAB 5004, other requirements would be the affiliated California Department of Education and Division of State Architect plan approvals. For instance, if a district is purchasing a new site as well, escrow must be entered or complete. And then, as discussed earlier, the 5-year facilities master plan must be submitted alongside the 5004. And if the district is submitting a new construction application, as a reminder, newly constructed facilities within a project may not be occupied prior to the conversion Form SAB 5004 submittal to our office. Now, this next slide includes a reference for the priority and funding process for applications processed under bond funding. As you can see, the application process kickstarts with our office processing the application, and subsequently, State Allocation Board will provide an unfunded approval of an application. Following that, you would then participate in an upcoming priority funding round which occurs twice a year generally, once from January to June, and the next from July to December. These rounds have associated filing rounds. For instance, if a district wanted to participate in Priority Funding Round 30 for the spring bond sale, which is effective January 1st, 2026 through June 30th of 2026, the district would have to submit a request to convert their unfunded approval between November 12th, 2025 through December 11th, 2025. Once the application receives an apportionment, then the district has 90 days from the date of apportionment to submit a signed grant agreement and a complete and valid Form SAB 5005. Finally, we have some top tips for successful submittal to OPSC for the Form SAB 5012. First, prepare and submit your new construction and modernization eligibility establishments and updates in advance. That way, they are ready to be submitted in conjunction with your funding application on day one of the program opening dates. Next, make sure you obtain a local governing board resolution for the 5-year facilities master plan prior to the opening dates of the program so that you can submit it concurrently with your Form SAB 5012 submittal. Then take some time to review the new Proposition 2 provisions for supplemental grants. There's some really new exciting opportunities within the modernization program to construct facilities that otherwise were under the purview of new construction projects only. Also, ensuring that your district representatives listed within OPSC Online are up to date and accurate. If you want to authorize additional district representatives, there is a process for which you must submit a local governing board resolution that authorizes the individual to act on behalf of the district, as well as submit a Form SAB 5003 with their information to our office. We do have this procedure documented within our online webpage, but if you have any questions, our team is happy to provide any assistance that we can. Next, in anticipation of the program opening dates, we encourage you to have a draft Form SAB 5012 prepared and ready to be submitted via OPSC Online. That way, come day one, you can just sign and submit the form to our office virtually. Lastly, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Small School District Program team, as well as the Financial Hardship team that you'll be There are also OPSC County project managers for each respective county within California that are available to field questions as well within our office. And following this presentation, I also wanted to pitch our email subscription list, which is a really great way to keep up to date with things going on with our office, such as any state allocation board meeting notifications, any agendas, upcoming stakeholder meetings, priorities and funding announcements, and other really helpful, useful information. Additionally, we wanted to provide you with some points of contact for our office should you have any questions following this presentation. Our OPSC website page that I've referenced a few times in this presentation is listed at the very top here. And of course, my information can be seen below, as well as the Small School District Program email, which any emails sent there would go to the whole of my team. Following that, we have the Chief of Program Services, Brian Lepask, as well as our 2 Operation Managers Information, Joshua Potter and Tracy Sharp. Lastly, for districts interested in learning more about the Financial Hardship Program, please reach out to Jason Hernandez, whose information is provided here. That being said, thank you very much for your time. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Take care.